Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar, Playing to Win, Game-Changing Strategies for Insurance, Marketing, and Risk Management. Yes, we did change the name because as we were writing the content, Jeff kindly said there are some cool sports themes we can throw in here. And did I have to ask GPT analogies with sports? Because the only sport I know is F1. I sure did. So here we are.
We
We
called
hope
an
we get a lot
audible
of
on that one, I think,
call
Tanya,
an
is what you're
audible
looking
on
for.
that one.
We called an audible.
Which is football for those of you who don't know, which I found out. Yeah, so let's get it started. Let's introduce who's here today. We have Jen from Goose Digital, as always, joining us, and our very special guest, which we're so happy to have with us today, Jeff Barcelou, founder and CRO of QuickFacts, is here, and myself, Tanya Coburn from Trufla. So I thought we would talk about our scorecards, a little bit about our experience and why we're here talking to you today. So I think we should start with our guest. Hey, Jen, should we start with Jeff?
100%.
Let's
All
do
right.
it. Welcome,
I
Jeff.
assumed I was second in the screen, so I was mentally preparing to go second, but that's okay.
I
I
threw a
am so
curveball.
excited to be here. You did, you curveball. You and the sports analogies. You're really getting good at it so quick.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to be here. Really, really happy to be here with both two powerhouse women, Jen and Tanya. Thank you so much for inviting me on this podcast. It's a real pleasure and a treat. Yeah, so my background, I actually didn't have an insurance background prior to QuickFacts, so I've got a bit of a different look on things, which is nice. My experience prior, I graduated from St. Mary's with my MBA in 2016. I'd always done business, whether it was more on the selling side, a little bit on the marketing side, social media side, had little side hustles and whatnot. And then after my MBA, I did get into more on the marketing side and worked for an ad agency and then was a marketing manager for an international window and door manufacturer, and also did US sales there. So really kind of dove into that. But I've always been on the B2B side. So kind of a unique take. The B2C, a little bit, just touched on it. Actually, fun fact with a Donair supplier out your way, Tanya. Shout out Leo's Donair. Great Donair stuff. But yeah, so when I met Christy, my partner and co-founder at QuickFacts, she mentioned this idea, and that's what really brought me into QuickFacts. So now I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here. I do oversee the sales, customer success, marketing side of things here.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Jen, do you want to take it away?
Sure. I'm Jen Pugsley, VP of Customer Success at Goose Digital. I think most of the audience kind of knows us by now, Tan and I. But I'm a broker turned digital strategist. I've been working with carriers and brokers and MGAs for the better part of about 10 years now. Goose Digital is a full service digital marketing company specializing in marketing automation platforms and paid advertising. So I think my passion really lies in the fact that, the last decade has been crazy in this business. I mean, it was crazy before too. Started on the banking side, then went into the brokerage world. But, I think Tan and I have spent a lot of time trying to educate, break through the noise. There's a ton of investments that have gone on in this business between technology, marketing, and I think there's a real passion in making sure that these investments are fruitful. We don't always get it right, and there's a lot to learn, but there's that investment in making sure that the investments that these companies are making actually do something. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm Tanya Coburn. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Trufla. I've been in the insurance world since 2012. I started out in sales and then moved to marketing shortly after. My background's in music. I'm a musician, historian. Didn't think I would be in insurance. I thought I would be a professor teaching music, but here we are, and I love it. It combines both that like analytical side of my brain and the performance side. So yeah, I worked with a Sarah, the Sharp Insurance Group for their broker marketing, and now I am purely Trufla, but I still do work with a lot of our broker partners to help with that marketing piece. And I love seeing digital transformation at the brokerage level. I love seeing how small changes in technology can really impact revenue and productivity. So that's like, I'm so passionate about it. I'm so passionate about how marketing can really help with all of that. And so today, the three of us, our silos of expertise are coming together to talk about ways that we can really use insurance education to not only get more sales, but increase customer loyalty, but really build a stronger foundation for the future at your brokerage.
Mhm.
So what are we talking about today? Well, we did the kickoff and welcome, and then we are going to just go into how do you win the game, the marketing game before anything starts. And that is really through education, whether it's educating your marketing teams, your operation teams, and preventing those claims. And then we'll deep dive into, okay, so how do we eliminate some of those worries that we have, especially during catastrophic weather-related events, which we all see is increasing with climate change. And that one thing when I was a broker, and I'm sure Jen, you could relate, anytime there was an E&O investigation at the brokerage was like, you're just sweating bullets. And we want to avoid that as much as possible because we know how devastating that can be. And then we are going to be talking about calling an audible. So when that claim does happen, like when there is not a claim, sorry, when there's a catastrophic event, what's the best way as a broker that you can really be there for your client? Because after all, that's what brokers are best at. It's being that helping hand for your customer. And then the final whistle, some closing remarks, maybe some questions, and then that's it. We're off.
All right. Can be a lot of fun. So I don't know how I get lucky enough to kick off the offensive playbook, but I'm gonna kick off the offensive playbook. Who doesn't love scoring a goal or a touchdown or whatever? But we're gonna give you some strategies here on how to be a little bit more proactive, so you can protect clients. You know, this industry can be very reactive when something happens. So really important part is to be able to get ahead of things and feel confident in doing it, so that your customers are confident in you when you're doing it. So first thing we'll talk about is kind of closing the knowledge gap. So taking your insurance marketing and elevating that. So one of the things, and I was one of these people actually, so I can kind of talk to this, is most marketers come into insurance background and don't fully understand the massive amount of insurance information and knowledge that lives out there and that is needed to understand prior to going ahead and marketing that. So you know, that can be a really big barrier, and it can cause some missed opportunities in the marketing space. So we've got highlighted here, you know, inaccurate or generic messaging that's not really going to hit home. It's not going to resonate with anybody. Those generally, you're not going to get a whole lot of shares or comments or interactions with on that. So without the industry knowledge, that's kind of what marketers are going to be left to, is just using that generic information. You know, protect your home with the right insurance is a good example we've got here. That doesn't really tell us anything, and it's not targeted at anybody in particular, so it's too generic to make an impact. Missed cross and upsell opportunities. So brokers, you know, they do rely on their marketing to educate their clients and let them know what's going on, if there's additional coverages that are available out there for them. And as a marketer, you need to understand what coverages are available and what's there, so you can shout that out, because that's a really big opportunity for your sales team to get some inbound with that recognition. No claims preventions, education. So, you know, that's another big part there too. Proactive education is obviously the big one. We're going to talk about that a lot today with the crisis that we're going through, but telematics is another one, any kind of detection, anything like that. So marketing teams without industry knowledge they're not going to be able to produce content around claims prevention. And so that just leads to higher claims frequency and loss ratios. And then finally, the compliance and regulatory part of things. So There is a lot more kind of coming down on the regulation side and changes within the regulation that we're seeing. Depending on which province you're in, there's changes all throughout, and it does vary. But having an understanding of that, so you can then become the expert and communicate to your clients, customers, potential customers. An example here is full coverage auto insurance. Which doesn't actually exist. You don't want to be marketing that if that's not a real thing. Lose that confidence in your customers. So overall, when marketing is much more knowledgeable on the insurance side, it makes it so much more efficient, and you're really going to see big benefits.
I think on there too, if I can just chime in, Jeff, is that I think what we're seeing is like we're seeing this education trend, and we're going to get into it. And I think exactly to your point about marketers being educated on insurance is that this is where the industry is headed. I think this is the number one trend that we've been seeing. Certainly, we're seeing it working with our brokers and working with our carriers, that the style of content strategy, the style of communication is all now leaning towards proactive risk prevention and education. And we're going to get into that as we kind of talked about, but it is everything from not necessarily just the crisis when something actually happens. We're going to talk about that because Tan had some really great experiences, but also kind of maybe the less serious types of education that still is extremely valuable to the public right now.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jen. Really great point. So we'll talk about here, we've got an all-star lineup. So, how to build that really great insurance savvy marketing team, whether it's something that you just want to do now with your team that exists, or maybe you've gone through a draft and hired a wonderful new marketing person on your roster. They've got a great history of marketing and advertising, but not in the insurance space. So here's a little plan to help walk you through step by step, kind of what you can do in those first few months to really get them off on the right foot. So first, put them through the ringer, give them insurance 101, really talk about the fundamentals and just the basics of what that is, policies and risks. That's that fundamental understanding there, and you can use tools for that. Maybe you've got something built inside that you use for your brokers already. Maybe you want to leverage some of the nice tools out there like ChatGPT and stuff that can help kind of consolidate some of that information and put it in a really digestible way for somebody that's new to insurance. You deep dive into policy coverages, so then you get to understand kind of the underwriting process and how the market's all different. E&Os, very important to understand, right? And what the best practices are, so how they can impact broker liability and help mitigate that. We talked about kind of communicating additional coverage options to reduce those the broker liability. Industry terminology and compliance. How thick is that dictionary? That must be quite thick for those thick industry terms. Yeah.
Yeah, very thick. One thing on there is that I think it's important is, a lot of times when we're hiring marketers, teaching them about insurance, it's also kind of like all of the different ways these products are sold and serviced. I think they have a big gap. They might think, oh, is this a digital brokerage? Is this a traditional brokerage? Or am I like, how long did it take me to even understand an MGA?
Right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Right?
Or like the nuances with water coverage and what you can and cannot say. I remember writing blog posts and doing marketing in 2013 when overland water coverage, was it 20? I can't remember, like maybe 2014, 2015, when overland water coverage was coming out, and you couldn't really say flood insurance because it didn't include salt water, and you had to use like very specific terminology and just trying to and I was licensed at that time, so it was a little bit more easier for me to digest because I was also selling it. But at the same time, it was very overwhelming to understand what you can and cannot say, which is why for any marketer that's on the call, say may. This may cover. Never say it does cover. And anything you put online or on the internet, and always like at the end, limitations and exclusions may apply, because again, it goes with that E&O. It can hit you in your marketing material as well. So you want to be careful.
Yeah, those are great examples there. And yeah, again, as a non-marketer coming into it, I had no idea of the breadth of all that and the concern when it comes to the compliance. And one thing is, even on the terminology, I've learned is that carriers call things very different as well. So it can be a little bit confusing, if someone has dealt with a certain carrier and it's been called this coverage, and maybe you have to move them to another market, and then it's something different. Like, well, where did this go? I need this, and you've got to understand that it might change based on carriers within. So just to add another layer of complexity to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then, within your brokerage, you've got just an amazing breadth of knowledge there. You've got all kinds of senior people that have been there for a while and understand the information, the insurance world very well. So sit them with a senior broker, underwriting lead, claims experts, all those people with a lot of product knowledge. And if your marketer is good, and they should be asking questions, lots of questions. So come armed with those questions and make sure that they're, once they've gone through the ringer of the first couple of weeks, drinking through the fire hose, as they say, they should have a fair amount of questions that these people can really kind of bring, and then round out the edges of their information. They can provide real world insights, instead of just reading it on a book. It's like, okay, well, this happened last week. Let me tell you about this story, and walk them through this.
Yeah.
So that's really valuable, having real life experiences and being able to draw on that as a marketer. And then, reviewing content on a regular basis. It depends on what the content is. Biweekly, monthly could be fine. We're going to talk about the kind of the crisis one, which is more of a daily, hourly, minute kind of reviews, as that constantly changes. But you want to stay up to date on the content too. So that's a really important to have good cadence for just refreshing as you're in marketing. And then I'm going to throw a little plug in here. We got a little plug. So, implement quick facts. So talk a little bit about quick facts here, if I could. Can I steal the light for just a minute or
Yes.
two?
Oh my
here,
gosh,
Tanya,
please.
Jen? Just talking about
Absolutely.
it? Okay.
Yes.
Just in case someone's listening's not familiar with us. So what we do is we take all the underwriting information from all the insurance carriers that your brokerage would do business with, put it into one spot, and then we also compare them across all kinds of different coverages. So all those documents, thousands and thousands of documents, are pulled, updated by our team completely, so you don't have to deal with any of that. But from a marketing perspective, it puts it into these great charts, so you can easily look at different coverages and see and understand what the markets are doing. And we're a team of previous brokers here, so we also love to inject some learning components to it as well. So almost all of our coverage comparisons have a learning statements at the top. For an example, starting to thaw out, they're now starting to become a little bit nicer. So a common one for the seasonal is more ATVs. So for example, for ATVs, maybe you haven't done one in or maybe you've never ridden one as a marketer, so maybe you want to learn a little bit more. We've got categories of CCs. We've got what the heck is a CC if you're not familiar with it. Even some visual aids to show what the different ones are, and then of course then you get into more of the coverage one. But yeah, you never think of that. It's Christy says this sometimes in as we're talking to others, but it makes a good point. She's like, when I started as a broker, I was 20 years old, and I don't know, I didn't know what an ATV was. I had no idea, and I'm supposed to write coverage and be an expert for it. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
Sidebar story. Same thing. I remember my very first one of the training was our home trainer came out with this big board, and it had all this old electrical wiring, all this old, plumbing. So we could actually attach our brains to, like, okay, pre-1970, this is what knob and tube wiring actually looked like. So yeah, it's just, how would you even know that? Right. And I think what's so crazy valuable about what we're talking about here is that on the last slide, the first point was really, generic isn't going to work anymore. So how do you not get generic? Well, it's through education. It's through those things. Like, to your point, Jeff, what is a CC, and how do those CCs impact what customers need to know about insuring an ATV, right?
Yeah.
So beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. And it's so it's proving really valuable. And as a marketer, again, if it is becoming this maybe something's a topic that you'd like to cover, you could easily go in there, get a better understanding of it, of what that coverage is, what information is required. You can see the carrier differences and how you leverage that is kind of up to you. You don't want to be a little bit more specific, or you want to be a little more general when it comes to that, I would say, unless you're getting into more targeted segmentation, which Tanya's going to talk about a little bit later. But yeah, here's a great example. So next slide. Thank you, Tanya. So on the content marketing side, we've got a sample here for auto endorsement 27, which is your legal liability for damage to non-owned autos if you're renting a car, for example. So you could take this resource here, and as you can see, we've got a bunch of fake carriers. No, there's not a bunch of new carriers coming into the Canadian insurance game, I promise. I actually looked at this a bit of an old screenshot. We actually have a giant paragraph at the top explaining what it is and all the different coverages and stuff. So I should have given you a little bit more of an updated one. That's on me. But yeah, you can go in here, you can take a look at it, get a better understanding of it, leverage what offerings you have from the carriers you do have contracts with, your team can sell, and really create a very custom blog posts, social posts, and social posts from that. Infograph's a good one, being mindful of kind of the information you're sharing, of course. But this is a really great way to get very specific information that when somebody calls in to your brokerage, they already have an understanding of where your bars are, your goalposts are, if I could, and so that they understand what is possible within your brokerage and those posts, rather than you just saying, talking about generic insurance for your rented vehicles that might not get as much interest because it's not as specific enough. And then you could also do that through your email campaigns, newsletters. So you start segmenting that. And if you can actually use some powerful tools like the ones at Trufla, you can segment your customers that already have, that have those endorsements or maybe don't have them. But we think it would be a really good one for them to have on top of it. And you can segment that, leverage the information within a tool like QuickFacts to really create that and make that very specific.
I feel like just anecdotally, talking to friends or peers or acquaintances, there's so much misinformation of what insurance is and what it covers and what the responsibility is for the insurer versus the brokerage. And I feel like there's no way one broker can do all that education with one client on one phone call, either at the point of sale or during renewal if they call in or make a change. You just can't. It's not possible. And I think that's where, and I really wish I had a QuickFacts. I'm not just saying this because I love QuickFacts, but I was that marketer for like 8 years for the, insurance industry, the brokerage industry. And there was so much information. And oftentimes I did have to, like, even though I was licensed, I wasn't practicing. So you lose a lot of that information. And I had like key people on each team. I had a key person in auto, I had a key person for home, don't even get me started on motorcycles. Okay. That's a whole other thing. And then you had your high value homes that works completely different. So if I had like a database, I could just pull up and use ChatGPT to make the language more accessible. And, oh my gosh, the amount of content I could have put out, it's crazy. It's crazy. So I think about that a lot.
We're still working on a time machine to get us back 10 years and launch this 10 years ago, because we've been hearing this from other people. It's, been useful for them. So if we get there, maybe we can help past Tanya.
And what's crazy? It's like, for those of us who go on Instagram Reels, it's seeing those people that are like, well, I got my university degree without ChatGPT. It's so true. It's like, having to write anyway. It's hilarious. But
when you were talking, Jeff, I was just picturing a purple DeLorean.
It would be purple. Absolutely. Yeah.
But you know what? Here's the thing that's mind-blowing is without these pain points that we had to experience, Christy wouldn't have had the idea for QuickFacts, right? So
absolutely. No, she lived it for 17 years, and that's how it all comes out, right? It's funny. We talked to a lot of brokerages, just a quick aside, and everybody's got something trying to do something similar, and it's just because it's very apparent that this is a pain point, all that constant changing information. And no, it takes a lot to step up and kind of build it out and take a risk. Leaving a nice brokerage that is doing well and trying to launch a product. But I think at the end of the day, we're doing it to make brokers just that much better, their lives that much better, saving time, being more efficient, being more selling a bit more, and as an aside, making their marketing team much better too, empowering that. So yeah,
it's a empowerment play too, especially now that a lot of people are working either hybrid or remote. Like before times, I say pre-2020 is the before times, I would just lean over and be like, hey, Jeff, what's that endorsement for Aviva? But like, you don't have that anymore when you are in that hybrid or completely remote workplace, that you have to rely on a lot of these digital tools, because that peer-to-peer knowledge transfer isn't always there like it used to be. And I think that's where this is super powerful.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And there's just so many silos, right? And so these technology and integrating your marketing team, into that kind of that entire content strategy is so important right now, because you can't lean over, right? And that's essentially how Christy built the entire technology. Or that was the idea, right, Jeff, in the first place, is that
it was,
highly injured, couldn't lean over, right? No one could ask her questions.
Yeah, I actually think it was more she was getting inundated with it and couldn't do her everyday tasks because she was getting asked so many questions. It was pre-COVID, she had the idea, and then COVID was kind of the kickoff point where it was like, oh, everybody's asking for this now. But but that's been quite the shift in the past 4 years, 5 years now, I guess, with regards to how we need to access information. Do you think? And going through like Messenger, through different kind of services like that, is the information more difficult to obtain that way now that not everybody's fully in the office? There's more digital, more hybrid, more remote workers. Does it have the same effect as the kind of in-person conversation?
I think from a marketing, like, I can only speak in 10, you could probably jump on top of this too, but I think from a marketing perspective, what I see is that there's not enough marketers or digital marketing agencies. And, I'm not tooting our own horn here, but when it comes to a complex topic like insurance, there's not enough people willing to put up their hand to say, ask the right questions and really grind in. I feel like, and Tan and I talk about this every day, all day, but marketing teams they're so reactive, and you touched on it too, Jeff, right? The entire industry is so reactive. And so big part of my job is to kind of slow that down, just making sure that we go deeper into what the customers actually need and making sure we ask those right questions. So I think, Jeff, it is probably a bigger problem now.
For sure. You've got to be very cautious about how much content you're putting out, and to your point, making it quality content so that you don't become noise or just like something people just avoid if it's coming to their inbox, that just goes right into the spam or the junk or whatever. But that quality content, and that's where this information knowledge comes from. Yeah, and the style.
I don't want to make it a content webinar, and we will talk about that. But like, you can review the last webinar that we had for trends, but the style, right? You can't just write 15 paragraphs into an email that most people read on mobile and expect to have a decent readership performance. It's just not going to work, right? So you do have to stretch up into the thinking of, how should we get this message out? Should it be a small reel? Should it be some banners? Should it be some ads like we're showing here? And Tan talks a lot about like that actual, what channels, what style, then that's a big part of it too, right? So I think there's that notion of like, and I really think that needs to come across in this webinar, is that you got to figure out how to almost, as a marketer, take yourself out of what the message is, right? And more so follow this of how are we going to distribute this in the best way, and how are we going to talk about this in the best way versus, like I said, you know what, oh, I'm getting pressure down from my team that I got to get these 5 bulletins out, but when you look at the bulletin, it's like drab, it's a bunch of text, it's only over email. People haven't been reading our email for 3 months, so why do we think this one's going to cut through the noise? Like, the list goes on and on, right?
You know, I've been that marketer where I've had a lot of pressure to send these out. And I think the confidence and the empowerment to say no, and here's why. There's a better way. And for any marketer who's experienced or currently is experiencing that pressure, you can say no and just give the data to back it up. I remember the first time I said no and gave data to back it up, it was like the upper level leadership was like, cool. I was like, that's it. I've been doing this for a year, and and so don't be afraid to push back. I guess that's the advice, but just have the data to back it up. So Jen, do you want to, on that note, do you want to?
We're going to switch gears just a little bit on this risk prevention mantra. So one of the big trends we're seeing right now is paying for this level of awareness. So if you think about digital advertising, traditionally it's really around brand awareness, which is like talking about the company and, what you do for customers. And then there's lead generation, where you're actually trying to go and pitch for, almost bottom funnel leads, right? Leads that are ready to buy now. What's shifting is actually paying for creating campaigns and paying for a level of education, which is essentially awareness campaigns, but you're not actually trying to go and make a sale. Okay, so why would you do this? Well, organically, unless you've got a big, well-known brand, you're really not going to push the needle, okay, in terms of followers and engagement. Again, this goes dependent on your following base and the type of brand that you have, but you're really not going to make a dent, okay, if you're in getting these messages out organically. But for $10 a day on platforms like Meta, you can absolutely start educating your audience. And why you're going to do that is because you can really get focused in on the audience. So there's a ton of different ways that you can use data to go and target, or just even the criteria within these platforms. So we're just going to kind of chat about what types of content. I think this is really for the marketers, okay, on the call, not so much the insurance folks, because I think you guys know everything there is to know about fire and water and all, the seasonality of all these things. But I think for the marketers on the call, if you're new to insurance or within the last few years, these are kind of the big topics right now. And they obviously, we're about to approach spring thaw, the great big thaw that's going to happen, and in certain areas where you can focus on. Short behind that's going to be fire safety. And then you can jump on these other ones that are kind of like long-standing. So things like home security, auto theft prevention, which is like a huge topic, obviously, out in Ontario. I'm not sure if it's quite as far as the east where Jeff and Tan are, but big problem in Ontario. So just kind of start learning about these things. I think it goes back to what you were saying, Jeff, is going back on the training side. This is kind of the top topic, the hot topics. There's going to be other things. I think, Jeff, you had a point about, are there other things that aren't necessarily around claims education, but a little bit higher? So TAG, which is a technology that can be installed for auto theft. It is, get on that bandwagon and educate your customers around everything they need to know about TAG technology and what it does, right?
Jen, I do want to talk about, before you move on. So on the bottom there, it says ads with educational content receive 40% more engagement than direct promo ads. Yep. Why is that important? Why is that engagement metric so crucial?
Because you're not trying, what we're seeing again right now is that you're not trying to hard sell anything, right? So if you try to pay attention to how you're reacting on Meta every day in the audience, and let's say you're watching a reel and it's about education, maybe it's about psychology, or it's parenting, or it's about whatever, you'll probably notice yourself halfway through that video reel and not even knowing that it was sponsored. because the company's not trying to tell me anything. They're trying to educate me. And these are the ones that get the highest performance in terms of sharing with my mom. Hey, you need to know this. Sharing with, your friends and family. Like that's why they're getting, it's less about the hard sell now, and it's more about giving the public what they need, essentially. That's why
that knowledge leader. Yeah.
I will say the 40% is also, you obviously have the same targeting, right, as you do if you're trying to do, get a quote, look at us to get a quote. You're going to have the same targeting. But what I will say is that this is where you can start overlaying data from TrueFly. You can start overlaying data from QuickFacts, right? So as an insurance marketer, if I had that data, my campaign is going to be 1,000 times stronger because I'm going to target a specific audience, a specific demographic. And yes, you can get that inside these channels, but you're not trying to get everybody and everybody per se. If you're wanting to make an action, you're trying to, a good example of that would be customer marketing. So sure, build an email campaign for your customers, but take it a step farther and talk to them on a different channel as well, right? So anyway, I know there's a lot there, but that's essentially why we're seeing a 40% uptick in these types of ads.
We are starting to run out of time, Jen, but Jen has a slide that's about best practices and different ways you can target. This is talked about on our 2025 insurance marketing trends. So we're going to skip this for now due to time, but I'm going to put the link below in the chat. And at your leisure, you can go check that video out that we did.
I saw that in person, by the way. It's a great one. Everybody should go and see that right now. Well, as soon as this is done, not right now. As soon as it's done.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm going to start talking about covering all the bases, eliminating coverage gaps. So when I was a broker, my biggest fear was getting an E&O. I remember at whatever brokerage I was working with, obviously Sharp Insurance, because that's the big one I work for. Anytime there was an E&O investigation, all of the sales brokers, including me, we'd call it the sales pit, would be like, was it you? Was it me? Who was it? Like, it was just like this anxiety of, please God, don't be me. Don't look at me, when you look at the upper leadership. And so because of that fear of an E&O, because first of all, oftentimes brokerages have to pay out of pocket. So they're paying $30,000, $40,000 out of their own pocket to cover the E&O, because you do not want to make an E&O claim, because those premiums are going to go up so high it's not even worth it. And the deductibles too go up. So that is why, a big reason why we developed an AI to identify E&O gaps. And I do want to talk about this because of the catastrophic claims that keep increasing. I mean, last year alone was $8.5 billion in losses across Canada from fires, flood, hail. It's insane, wind damage. And based on what we're seeing this season already in the States, the weather patterns are severe, and it's probably going to affect Canada as we start to see spring and summer flooding and fires come into play. Hopefully not, but it might be the case, most likely be the case. So, when we talk about AI, artificial intelligence, we're talking about such large, thick layers of data that the AI is able to go in and compare. So when we look at, so how does it know that Joe Schmo should have water coverage? How does it know? It's because it's comparing Joe Schmo to 500,000 other policies out there that are very similar in a similar area. And it understands that, oh, you know what? Joe Schmo should have overland water coverage, and it will identify that it's missing. Because oftentimes, I know for our brokerage, I know that there's a talent crisis. I know that people are overwhelmed. You're not reviewing every policy. You're not looking at every coverage. You just can't. The time isn't there and the resources aren't there. And so, okay, great. So identify it. And then who has the time once it's identified to email the customer and be like, hey, you might be, we don't. I tried it as a marketer. We identified it. I sent the policy files back to the broker. Guess what? Only 5% were contacted because we don't have time. So that's where that hyper segmentation email marketing is so important. And it is based off an email template. So the email template template could, but it has dynamic fields that pulls from the AI. So it would be something like, hey, Joe Schmo, we noticed that your house on Provence Street in Toronto, Ontario is missing crucial overland and sewer backup coverage. We strongly recommend you put this on before the spring melt rainy seasons, because if there wasn't a catastrophic event to happen, it would be too late for you to put it on. Please give us a call back if you're interested, because we may have to qualify you for this coverage. I often get this pushback from brokers. Well, we don't know what zone they're in. We don't know if they even qualify. So if you put that sentence, we still have to qualify you for this coverage. It gives you an opportunity to talk to that client, have that touch point, review the policy, and get them the coverage they need before an E&O happens. But you can do this to 300 to 400 records at a time. But that one disclaimer, we may have to qualify you for this coverage, covers that issue that brokers are
and another quick example of that. I ran one for commercial on a segment that didn't have adequate cyber insurance. Same thing. You can still put a disclaimer, right? This is meant to drive a policy review, right? So we can ensure that you have adequate cyber coverage, as an example.
Absolutely. And this is just a quick, people always say, what does this AI look like? Like, how does it know? So this is a quick visualization of our coverage X-ray, and it will show you what's missing in your book of business. So third-party liability. So obviously we need higher liability amounts now. Things are more expensive. Losses are bigger. So here it's telling you, okay, how many people don't have 2 million liability, which is like the standard, and soon it's probably going to go up to 3 million. And then it kind of gives you a snapshot of who's missing what. You just click on that, whatever's highlighted, and it gives you a list of customers and what they're missing. And then you can just email from there, which is really cool.
That's incredible segmentation, really.
Yeah, it's so fast too. I remember like it took Rogers Insurance at the time, it was in 2015, 2 weeks to pull a list of who, like, during the fires, of postal code, additional living expenses with what insurance company. They had to pull like 4 or 5 different lists from different places and do, what's it called? Back in Excel, we had to compare and take out, I forget what it's called, but like a merge or something.
Merge, yeah.
Yeah. So it took a long time, whereas this is like literally 3 seconds of time. And that's why we built it, because we live that pain point. And then this is an example of an email that you would send out that's hyper personalized. It is a template, but it's hyper personalized because it has those dynamic field pulls. So it's like, Dear John, hail season is just around the corner in Calgary. We noticed that your 2015 Master 3 doesn't have comprehensive coverage. Oftentimes, when there's a severe hailstorm, many vehicles are considered to be a total loss, meaning you'd have to replace your car. We strongly recommend you add this coverage to your policy. Give us a call today or log in.
So, and how much more effective is that than, Dear John, with hail season just around the corner, do you have enough coverage? Oftentimes, call us or log in. It's like, oh, okay, you don't know, do I don't know, you tell me.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Aren't you my broker? Aren't you supposed to know this? I think one of the cool things about this example is, again, I always encourage our customers to stretch up the thinking too, right? So this can be a text message, right? A version of what you just said, Jeff, could be a little less personalized on Meta, because you want to be careful there in terms of privacy, right? But that's what I really think is so important, is it can't just be a one and done. You got to think about how we engage across multiple platforms and multiple environments all the time. But exactly.
Yeah, great point.
Okay. I love talking about crisis communications. I nerd out because I think this is like your time to shine as a brokerage. So what happens? Okay, so it's May. There's flooding happening. Let's say Nova Scotia, because Jeff and I are in Nova Scotia. There's flooding in various parts of Nova Scotia right now. And people are panicked. They've been asked to evacuate. They don't know what's going on. They're going to lose their livelihood, their houses. Do they have coverage? And they're like, what is happening? And this is the time a broker can really show their value, and that is to be there for their customers. And we're calling an audible. This is how you play it. It is so important to establish crisis communications best practices before you do anything else. These are things I learned firsthand from the Calgary floods working in insurance, from Fort McMurray working in insurance, those massive fires, to pandemic crisis communications management. And that is the first priority of your communications and marketing team and your brokers is to ensure the safety of your policyholders. So provide evacuation alerts, send them alerts, either push notifications if they have a mobile app or through email, like an emergency checklist. Here's what you should be bringing with you, your passports, blah, 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 get out safe, do this. They're like, so during the Fort McMurray fires, I had my Twitter directly onto, I forget what it was, like a Fort McMurray page where they would show road closures due to fire, and I'd fire off emails like, hey, this road is closed. You know, you might want to use this road if you're trapped here, you can't get out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was able to segment and do it really fast because we had a very early model that we were using for that true mobile segmentation. It wasn't like it is now, it was very like back end stuff, but our developers were pulling those lists for me on the back end like within seconds. And I was able to fire those emails through Constant Contact at the time. And I also had an emergency landing page that people can click on, and we'd update it hourly. I was even up, maybe this was going too far, people, but like I was updating it at like 11, 12 o'clock at night. This is before I had kids and had time. And then, yeah, so that's that proactive communications, please. Like, so like proactively communicate the claims process because people are worried, like, this is my house, what's going to happen? What's going on? Make sure that like send an email and be like, I hope you're safe now that you've evacuated. Here's what's going to happen with your home insurance. And you can pull it if they're covered. Okay, so you're covered you have the overland water coverage. Here's your step-by-step guide for what's going to happen next in the claims process. Here's what you need to know about your additional living expenses. Here's what you need to keep. And again, don't put all that information in an email. Put like 2 or 3 teaser sentences and then click here for more information and have that one page that you're constantly updating with resources. And it just takes less time off your communications and marketing. And your client's not going to sit there reading a very long email because they're not going to be on their desktop. They've evacuated.
Yeah, and that stuff's coming into brokers fast and furious, right? That happens so fast, and it's really hard to keep up with that information. So if you've got to become the expert to then shout that out. And so QuickFacts, for example, is a great spot to aggregate that information so you can see everything that's happening. What are all the carriers doing? What's going on in the industry, to centralize that information so you don't have to pour through all those documents or try and keep up with it all yourself, coming in many different directions, and be able to create those great communication pieces like what Tanya was saying, and get that out there. Because if you can proactively communicate, I mean, brokers are dealing with claims, they're dealing with people really concerned that you do need to go through various processes of insurance during these crises. The more you can get out and tell people ahead of time, the less they're going to call in, and your team, rather than being crazy overworked and not having enough time to do anything and help all the people, you can actually alleviate a lot of that stress off of your team. And the brokerage comes out looking really good at the end because they were ahead of things. They were ahead of the game, telling as it was happening. It's just such a great look, and really fits with the broker being part of the community and helping support community in these times.
It makes a huge difference, I promise you. And then this is something I found doing marketing and communications during a time of a crisis. There's going to be a lot of misinformation. Even the media is going to have misinformation, and you want to get ahead of that and educate your clients. There's a lot of assumptions that are made, especially with insurance. People love to hate insurance during a time of crisis. So you want to monitor, listen, and react to that. And then, of course, like the post-recovery, like don't just shut off communications after the catastrophic event has happened. Like really look after especially people going through a claims process, check in, look after them, be like, is everything okay? What's going on? Is there any friction points we can help you with as your broker? Oh my gosh, you will not only have their loyalty, but they will be your own little promoters. They'll be your influencers who go off and be like, ABC Insurance Company treated me like their best friend during this process. Like they really helped me out. I know that we're really running out of time, so I won't go into the intricacies of that. But I do really want to talk about, like, Jeff and I are in Nova Scotia. He's in Dartmouth. I'm in Halifax. Actually, we were in Bedford at the time when there were very like rare fire that broke out in Halifax, and it was like I could see it from my front window. It wasn't closed, but I could see the fires, and the city wasn't giving enough updates, so we didn't know what was going on. Like you'd get evacuation alerts close to you, but you didn't know if you should be preparing for evacuations. They would only update you if something big happened, which
Yeah.
is crisis communications error number one.
Yeah.
Always, even if there isn't an update, and I know that like this isn't your job as brokers, but like just generally, even if something is happening that's causing high anxiety and there is no update, sending a message that like, hey, Wawanesa, this is the last we heard about Wawanesa. They're setting up additional living expense centers where they're handing out cards. So, like if 2 days there's no updates, be like, hey, status quo, nothing's changed with Wawanesa. We're still here for you. Let us know if you need anything. But
Yeah, that's great reassurance. That's a good point.
it's great. Yeah. And it was actually a volunteer firefighter in
Wow.
Halifax that was doing all the updates. And funny enough, everybody was following his Twitter. I knew that there was a fire that broke out near where my daughter had her daycare, and they were closing the street to traffic in like 5 minutes. So I like flew
Yeah,
out, got her before the road closed. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to get to her. Almost hit a water plane, by the way. I felt like I was in a Mission Impossible movie. I was driving, a water plane was like this, getting water. It was fantastic. It was the most excitement I've ever had. Got my daughter, got back to safety. But it's so important.
That's amazing. I can't wait to read the book and see the movie
Right?
afterwards that comes to that.
Yeah,
But yeah,
coming up on the end, yeah.
yeah,
Sorry,
I
Jeff,
remember.
I
I
cut you
remember.
off.
No, I just quick thing. I remember looking early on. I was on it. I think the day of. I was looking for information. Of course, everybody was looking for information. So found that guy. I think he had like 3,000 followers, and by the end of a week, he had like 65,000 followers. Like just the importance and how much traction can be gained by providing timely, accurate information and being proactive and just building that support and trust. Really.
And it's coming from the right place. Like Tan and I talk about that
Yeah.
in the last one, right? Is that it's this authenticity. You're not actually hoping to, I mean, that's a bonus, but I can tell you that probably wasn't the first thing on this person's mind with 65,000 followers. It was, I got to get this information out to these people, right? And I think from a marketing perspective, whether you're paying for that or not, it still all has to come from the right place in order for it to actually perform well. Yeah. One thing that I think, Tan, you're going to, on this crisis communication, I think one of the things that like these we can't prevent, right? I think that talking to one of my brokers when we were planning this webinar was that he had said that 90% of the claims that he had that he was dealing with last winter season, 90% of them were preventable. So this had nothing to do with, a catastrophic incident that was going on, right? This was more the $30,000 claim, the $20,000 property claim that no one wants to have, right? Mm-hmm.
So this checklist I created from my own experience dealing with several large weather-related crisis communications. So I will send this out to everybody. It's so helpful just to have a plan before a crisis happens. So you have one person that approves all the communications, do the templates ahead of time, have those approved, have a database that you can segment and send emails right away. And it's so important having that quick fire communication and that multi-channel approach. So social media, email marketing, push notifications, text messages, make sure you're on multiple channels so people get the message.
Leverage that checklist. That's a ton of knowledge in that one page. Yeah. So gotta leverage that. That's
amazing. I love
amazing.
that checklist, Tan. And I love what you talk about your single source of truth. So for the people that are getting this checklist, it's super important because, that's going to help you react quickly when you got, 30 markets sending out their information at any given time. And how do you actually put that into your voice as a broker and get that over to your marketing team, which in your case was you.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And I'll probably do like a short webinar just on crisis communications, probably in April or May when things are starting to ramp up, just because I'm so passionate about it and it makes a huge difference. And this is an example of how quickly you can segment and all the filters you can use, all the data that's there, and directly email out from TrueMobile's database to your client. That's hyper personalized. So yeah, sorry I sped through crisis communications. There is a lot there. I'll do a separate webinar for more information if you are interested. It's a lot of content. So, and that's it. That's, I think, is that the end?
That's our
Is
wrap.
it?
There.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, that flew by. Yeah.
that
Oh
flew
my
by.
goodness. Well, this was fun. You guys have a lot of fun on here. I gotta say,
Thank
thanks
you
for
for
having me.
joining us, Jeff. It was such a
Thank
pleasure to
you.
have you here with us.
Yes,
Pleasure's all
thank
mine.
you.
Absolutely.
And please, we encourage you to contact us, send us an email, connect with us. We love to hear any ideas you might have for webinars you might want in the future. If you have any questions about some of the topics that we talked about, we're so open to jumping on a 5-minute call or just emailing back and forth for any questions you have. And please, now it's question time. So enter your questions in the chat and we will answer them for you. This is pre-recorded. And yes, I did match my shirt to the presentation because it's all about branding because I'm in
Oh my
marketing.
gosh, you did. You
I
did.
did. I copied
Oh
the
my
color
gosh.
theme.
Nailed it.
Yeah, so ask away. We're in the chat for the next 5 minutes. And yeah, thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you,
Thank you.
Jen.
Jen.
Appreciate it. Thanks for joining, everybody. Appreciate it. And thank you guys for having me.
Bye,
Awesome.
everybody.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.